The air in Meadowbrook Acres was a thick, malignant thing, pressing down on the asphalt until it shimmered, turning every lawn into a silent, suffering hostage. It was the kind of summer that broke spirits and strained marriages, but for Liam and Maya Harrison, it was the summer that almost broke them financially. Their air conditioning unit, a relic from the Nixon administration, had finally gasped its last, sending an unceremonious $4,000 repair quote straight to their already depleted savings. "This," Liam announced, wiping a sheen of sweat from his brow with the back of a dirt-smeared hand, "is the revolutionary solution." He stood beside a behemoth of repurposed plastic, a 330-gallon intermediate bulk container, IBC tote. It was square, caged in aluminum scaffolding, and originally designed to transport chemicals, but now, after 2 days of meticulous scrubbing, sealing, and a surprisingly elegant veneer of pressure-treated bamboo fencing stapled to the exterior, it looked less like an industrial container and more like a minimalist, modern, slightly oversized hot tub that had forgotten the hot part. Maya, perched on the edge of their dilapidated patio, watched him connect the cheap filter pump they had sourced from Facebook Marketplace. She wasn't laughing. Her eyes held the same blend of exhaustion and faint, desperate hope that mirrored his own. "It's beautiful." "Lee, truly. But are we going to have to explain to the HOA that this isn't a biohazard containment unit?" Liam grinned, a rare, genuine flash of white against his tanned, tired face. "It's a water feature. Section 4.0c allows for decorative, non-permanent water features, provided they don't exceed 4 feet in height and are shielded from street view. It's 4 feet tall, and we built the privacy screen around it." He patted the rough, splintered bamboo. "We're golden. Besides, this heat is an act of God. Even the HOA has to respect that." He finished the connection, the tiny pump whirring to life with a hopeful, asthmatic sound. The hose had been filling the tote for 6 hours, and the water was finally a good foot from the brim, cool, chlorinated, and shockingly inviting. "First dip," Liam declared, already kicking off his ruined work boots. Maya shook her head, a smile finally tugging at the corner of her mouth. "I need a suit. No time." He pulled her off the patio chair with a strength she hadn't realized he still possessed, dragging her toward the new structure. They climbed the short, wobbly step stool he'd fashioned from cinder blocks and then, with a synchronized, grateful sigh, plunged into the shockingly cold water. The relief was instantaneous, narcotic. The water was waist-deep, just enough to float, just enough to escape the tyranny of the sun. They splashed each other, their laughter echoing through the silent, oppressive heat of the neighborhood. For a full 10 minutes, there was no mortgage, no broken AC, no $500 car payment due. Only the sound of clean water rushing over plastic and the pure, unadulterated joy of cooling down. Their private moment, however, was being meticulously observed. Eleanor Henderson didn't need to peek. She had a vantage point, a tactical superiority derived from her home's elevated position and her utter refusal to ever close her blinds. From her spotless, climate-controlled kitchen, she had watched the entire construction, tracking the movement of every cinder block and every bamboo slat with the focused intensity of a drone operator. Mrs. Henderson wasn't just a neighbor. She was the self-appointed chairwoman of the Meadowbrook Acres Architectural Review Board, ARB, a position she treated with the solemnity of a Supreme Court justice. Her yard was a surgical marvel of topiary and herbicide. Her life, a carefully curated, zero-tolerance zone for deviation. And what the Harrisons had built was not just a water feature. It was a brazen, tacky declaration of improvisation. It offended her sense of order and, more unforgivably, suggested that one could achieve happiness without spending a proper, registered sum of money. She checked her watch. 16:03. Exactly 3 minutes past the point where a decent, rule-abiding resident should be wrapping up their unapproved activities. She didn't storm out. Eleanor Henderson moved with the deliberate precision of a legal summons being served. She pulled on a pair of immaculate white capri pants and a crisp, collared linen shirt. She retrieved the official ARB clipboard, complete with the laminated Meadowbrook covenants and bylaws, highlighted, tabbed, and cross-referenced. When she arrived at the property line, separated only by a low, purely decorative split-rail fence that Liam was always meaning to replace. The Harrisons were still submerged, their heads bobbing, their voices low and happy. Eleanor cleared her throat, a dry, clinical sound that cut through the lazy summer atmosphere like shattered glass. Liam opened his eyes, blinked the water away, and saw her. His smile evaporated. "Afternoon, Mrs. Henderson." He climbed out, dripping onto the concrete patio, instantly feeling vulnerable and exposed. He reached for a towel. "Don't bother, Liam," she said, her voice a precise, chilled instrument. She didn't look at the pool, only at him, as if the water feature was too low class to warrant her full attention. "I'm not staying long. I'm simply delivering this formal notice of violation." She held out the clipboard, the white paper stark against the dark wood. Maya clambered out, grabbing the towel first and wrapping it around herself. "A violation? Eleanor, come on. It's 98 degrees. It's a temporary water feature. We checked the rules. Section 4C. Mrs. Henderson finally glanced at the IBC tote, the bamboo screening, the cheerful blue liner visible over the rim. She curled her lip. 4C covers fountains, bird baths, and aesthetically pleasing koi ponds. Maya. Not, and I quote from the addendum filed in, 2018 under transient structures, a repurposed industrial containment vessel. The very definition of decorative is compromised by the nature of its original purpose, which, I might add, is clearly visible from the rear access point. "The rear access point is our utility shed," Liam protested, stepping closer. "And we painted the plastic. It's white and blue. It looks better than your cracked cement bird bath." "A matter of opinion, Liam," Eleanor countered, completely unperturbed. She tapped a freshly manicured nail against the clipboard. "However, the violation isn't purely aesthetic. It pertains to volume and location. Volume? It's 330 gallons, less than half the 800-gallon limit for non-in-ground pools. Ah, but that limit is for structures expressly designed for recreational use and registered with the ARB 48 hours prior to installation, which yours is not. More importantly, we move to Section 3B, setback requirements for non-permanent structures." Eleanor's eyes finally dropped to the ground, but not at Liam's feet. She was looking just past the edge of the small, recently poured concrete pad he had set the tote on to keep it level. "You poured that small slab last weekend, correct?" she asked, her tone shifting from accusatory to coldly investigative. "It was just a quick leveling pad. A couple of bags of mix, less than 6 feet square." "We didn't want the tote to tip," Liam said, feeling a prickle of genuine anxiety now. "Precisely," Eleanor purred, that cold look returning. "And that pad encroaches by a measure of 4.5 inches onto the utility right-of-way easement that runs along the entirety of the western property boundary." Maya lowered the towel, her eyes wide with sudden fear. "The utility easement? We're 10 feet from the property line!" "The easement is supposed to be. The original survey placed the easement 10 feet from the original fence line." "Maya, the resurvey commissioned by the ARB in 2021, a resurvey that was mailed to every resident, by the way, shifted the recorded property line 6 feet further east, meaning the easement now runs just 4 feet from the edge of your patio." She handed the clipboard to Liam, the sheer weight of the laminated document feeling like a $1,000 fine in his hands. "That can't be right," Liam mumbled, his eyes scanning the official document, the specific language of the code washing over him like an unpleasant wave. "The boundary line hasn't moved since 1995. We had the satellite image." "Satellite images are for aesthetics." "Liam, we follow registered deeds and approved surveys," Eleanor stated, her triumph now palpable. "You didn't just install an unapproved structure. You placed a structural foundation, no matter how small, on protected utility access land. That is a serious Category 3 violation." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a low, venomous conspiratorial whisper that only amplified the malice. "The ARB deadline for total removal and restoration of the area to grass or approved hardscaping is tomorrow, 09 hours. The fine starts at $500 per day thereafter. Given the potential infrastructure risk, I have also alerted the district's water control board as a matter of civic duty. She straightened, adjusted her collar, and walked away without another word, her perfectly white shoes clicking rhythmically until they disappeared around the corner of the house. Liam and Maya stood dripping on their patio. The joy of the water feature instantly poisoned. The cool air hitting their skin suddenly felt like a chill of dread. $450, Maya whispered, calculating the first day's fine against their balance. We don't even have $450. Liam looked at the violation notice, a nightmare of legal jargon, then at the beautiful bamboo-wrapped bin. It was impossible to remove and resod the area by 9 a.m. tomorrow. It was a setup. She's lying about the survey, Liam said, his voice flat. That resurvey was for the retention pond, not the property lines. She's bluffing. I'm going to... The court order, thick and aggressively official, slipped from Liam's numb fingers and slapped against the polished hardwood floor of the entryway. It landed on a photo of him and Maya from their wedding day, its crisp edges obscuring their smiling faces. The silence that followed the departure of the utility workers was heavier, more final, than the thunderous heat outside. $35,000? Maya breathed. Leaning against the doorframe, her voice a strained wire. She was still wrapped in the towel, but the water in her hair was long since dry. The towel was now a desperate, useless shield against a catastrophe. Lee, what did they mean, remediation and downtime? It's 4 little holes. We can fill them tonight. We can drain the tote, break the pad up, and be done before morning. Liam was already halfway back to the computer, his earlier fury giving way to a cold, frantic clarity. He felt the insidious tickle of the concrete dust from his work earlier, the very dust that was now threatening to implode their lives. It's not the holes, Maya, it's the principle. The injunction isn't about the pool. It's about precedent. If they let us get away with disturbing the easement above a smart grid confluence node, it weakens their entire enforcement mechanism for the whole neighborhood. They're using us to set an example. He slammed the search bar with his index finger. Typing wildly, Meadowbrook Acres HOA Resurvey, 2021. They don't care about precedent, Liam. They care about money. $2,000 immediate access fee? How do we even stop the clock on the $35,000 liability? We have to prove we haven't damaged the node. The injunction is a preliminary injunction, a stop work order. It assumes guilt. We have to file a response, a counter motion, and we have to do it yesterday. He looked over his shoulder at her, his eyes hollowed out by fear. The utility guys didn't come to remove the pool. They came to make sure we don't touch the ground at all until their geological team can survey the damage. And that survey is probably what costs $35,000. Maya straightened, pulling the towel tighter, an unfamiliar steel entering her voice. Okay, stop. You are not going near that pad with a jackhammer. We need professional help. We need a lawyer who specializes in HOA disputes, and we need a surveyor. Now, Liam laughed, a short, bitter sound that held no humor. We can barely afford the gas in the car, Maya. Where are we getting a lawyer? A decent real estate lawyer in this county starts at $500 an hour, just to pick up the phone. This isn't small claims, this is utility infrastructure. Then we find one who hates Eleanor Henderson as much as we do, Maya shot back, grabbing her phone. I'm calling every single legal aid office, every pro bono hotline, and every junior partner who owes someone a favor. You keep digging, focus on the ARB. Eleanor wouldn't risk a lie about the easement unless she was certain. She's not just petty, she's calculating. Liam nodded, turning back to the glowing screen. Maya's focused, panicked action was the only thing keeping him from melting into a puddle of self-pity and concrete dust. He found the full, multi-volume 2021 ARB resurvey documentation. It wasn't the clean, official CAD drawing he had found moments ago. This was the raw data package, hundreds of pages of soil reports, elevation changes, and buried deep in the appendices, the minutes from the private committee meeting where the ARB approved the resurvey. He scrolled quickly, his mind skipping over technical terms like percolation rate and hydraulic load, searching only for 2 names, Henderson and easement. He hit pay dirt in the minutes from a meeting dated October 12, 2021. Eleanor Henderson, listed as ARB Chair and Chief Liaison, had championed the resurvey, arguing it was necessary to address unforeseen runoff and drainage issues caused by the recent completion of the new community clubhouse development a mile away. Mrs. Henderson reiterated the urgent need to secure the utility access right-of-way, particularly given the new smart grid confluence node installation scheduled for Q4 2021. She motioned to expand the easement's subsurface disturbance restriction from 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches across all parcels bordering the western perimeter, citing potential structural instability due to soil density variation. Liam's heart hammered against his ribs. She knew. She didn't just stumble upon this rule. She authored it. She had tightened the security around the easement specifically to create an unforgiving, absolute barrier. She was not bluffing. She was operating with surgical, bureaucratic precision, using the power of the ARB to create a personal, inescapable trap. "Maya," he called out, his voice hoarse. She made the rule. She authored the restrictive amendment in 2021 specifically targeting the depth. She was laying the groundwork for something like this. Maya returned, rubbing her temples, her face pale. "I got 2 callbacks. One wants a $5,000 retainer just to look at the TRO. The other is legal aid, and they can't touch anything involving HOA jurisdiction and commercial utility law. We are officially on our own, Lee. Unless we can prove they are wrong about the damage, we are liable for that $35,000. Liam stared at the minutes, then back at the image of the IBC pool, a picture of cheap, defiant happiness. "I can't afford a lawyer. I can't afford to pay the fine. But I can't afford to lose 35 grand either. We have to fight fire with fire. We have to find her vulnerability." He closed the ARB minutes and navigated to the county property records, pulling up the detailed schematic for Lot 42, Eleanor Henderson. Eleanor's property was a fortress of aesthetic compliance. In-ground pool, approved composite decking, professionally manicured flower beds. Everything was precisely where it should be, down to the millimeter. Liam zoomed in on the decking, searching for any minor infraction. A railing too low, an unapproved color, anything. The deck was pristine. Then, his eyes caught the details of the swimming pool itself. The pool was an approved fiberglass shell, professionally installed in 2017. He looked at the installation report, which included the necessary utility inspection sign-offs. Everything was compliant. Too compliant. It was frustratingly perfect. He scrolled up the page to the utility right-of-way easement map for Lot 42. Eleanor's yard was enormous and completely cleared the easement. But the original survey line, the 1995 marker, was still noted in faded blue lines on the schematic. The decking, a large custom job, was built right up to the new 2021 easement boundary. It was perfectly legal. He slumped back in his chair, defeated. She's untouchable, Maya. Her whole life is compliance. She designed the system to be a weapon, and she's standing outside the blast radius. "Wait," Maya said, peering over his shoulder, her finger tracing the screen. "Go back to the pool installation report from 2017, the one before she changed the rules." Liam did. He pulled up the permit, 2017-0842 pool install. "Look at the decking material," Maya instructed. "Composite. Standard issue, ARB approved," Liam mumbled. "Confused?" "No, not the material. Look at the footings for the deck. The 2017 plans for that deck show concrete piers poured at 30 inches deep, correct? Standard deck footings for this climate. Yeah, 30 inches. 6 feet away from the 1995 easement line. Totally fine." "The 1995 easement line," Maya repeated, her voice slow, a light beginning to dawn in her eyes. "Eleanor pushed the property line and the easement 6 feet closer to the houses in the 2021 resurvey, right? She did that to trap us." Liam stared at the screen, then back at the 2021 map showing the new boundary. He pulled up the overlay. The new easement boundary line had indeed shifted 6 feet east, cutting a deeper swathe into everyone's backyard. "Now, look at her deck on the 2021 map," Maya whispered, her hand gripping Liam's shoulder with sudden intensity. Liam followed the line. Eleanor Henderson's pristine, professionally installed 2017 composite deck built right up to the now-shifted boundary, was suddenly 3 feet inside the new utility right-of-way easement. It's inside the easement, but the footings were done in 2017. The new 2.5-inch subsurface disturbance rule wasn't in place yet, Liam said, trying to find the loophole, but Maya was already ahead of him. She authored the 2021 amendment. She knew the resurvey was coming, and she wrote the new rule to target future disturbances. But the utility board doesn't care about when the structure was built. They care about access, and they care about risk. The 2021 easement was established to protect the confluence node. She pointed at a clause in the preliminary injunction that had been served on them. The presence of any structural foundation exceeding 2.5 inches in subsurface depth, regardless of installation date, requires immediate geological inspection and certification of no interference with the smart grid node access line, as the node's proximity necessitates zero structural load-bearing on the right-of-way. Eleanor Henderson had used her position to move the boundary, making her own deck with its 30-inch deep concrete footings a massive, pre-existing violation of the very access easement she was claiming to protect. Liam felt a wild, almost delirious surge of adrenaline. She's sitting on a $35,000 liability herself. Her deck is anchored 30 inches into the ground inside the easement she just created. The smart grid node is right there! Not just a liability, Lee, Maya said, her voice dropping to a fierce, cold whisper. If she filed the 2021 amendment without disclosing that her existing, non-compliant deck would fall inside the new, more restrictive easement, that's not just a zoning dispute. That's a breach of fiduciary duty to the HOA and potentially fraud against the utility board. Liam pulled up the rain, a sudden, furious downpour, sheeted across the front porch, mixing with the sweat and fury on Eleanor Henderson's face. She didn't merely knock. She hammered the wood with the flat of her hand, the sound muffled and yet frantic beneath the roar of the cloudburst. Liam opened the door just wide enough to reveal his face, Maya hovering right behind his shoulder, their expressions perfectly synchronized. Cold. Exhausted resolve! Take that thing down! Eleanor shrieked over the rain, her perfect linen shirt clinging to her. Her composure, usually a shield of Teflon, had dissolved into raw, sputtering outrage. You will dismantle that obscene monstrosity immediately, or I will have the sheriff's department here citing vandalism and public disturbance before the hour is out. Vandalism? Liam asked, his voice calm, dangerously low. He opened the door further, allowing the sight of the waterlogged front yard and, just visible through the driving rain, the giant painted IBC tote lying like a downed aircraft in the backyard. It's our property, Mrs. Henderson. The ARB rules only govern structures for which we seek approval. We never sought approval for a personal billboard. Don't play semantic games with me, Liam. You know exactly what you've done. She leaned in, her voice dropping from a shriek to a harsh, controlled hiss of pure menace. You have committed libel and slander against the chairwoman of this association. You have attempted to publicly incite a panic concerning critical public utility infrastructure. I could ruin you. I could see you both sued into destitution, divorce, and eviction by morning. You already tried that, Maya interjected, stepping into the doorway. Her voice was steady, the sound of bedrock. The preliminary injunction, the $2,000 immediate access fee, the $35,000 liability. You tried to quietly bury us under a rule you created, knowing your own deck was a massive 30-inch violation of that exact same rule. Eleanor flinched, a tiny, almost imperceptible twitch around her eye that was more telling than any scream. That deck was installed 4 years before the rule change. It is grandfathered in. You have no legal basis. Read the injunction you served us with, Eleanor, Liam said, holding up a soaked copy of the TRO, pointing at the bold text Maya had found. It says, the presence of any structural foundation exceeding 2.5 inches in subsurface depth, regardless of installation date, requires immediate geological inspection. Your deck is sitting on 30-inch concrete piers, and the minute the utility company starts to investigate our 4-inch footings, they will be legally compelled to check all other deep-set structures within the new easement, including your beautiful, expensive, non-compliant composite deck. The wind shifted, spraying rain onto the porch. Eleanor gripped the doorframe, her eyes burning with hatred and calculation. The silence stretched, broken only by the deluge. She knew they had her. They had the minutes, the survey overlay, and the language of the utility board's own demands. "What do you want?" she finally ground out, every syllable costing her dearly. Liam didn't hesitate. He knew this was the one and only moment of power they would ever have. First, the immediate retraction of the temporary restraining order, with a signed declaration from you, as ARB chair, stating the initial notice was issued based on faulty or superseded survey data. Impossible. I cannot retract a court-issued injunction. Then you must cover the $2,000 immediate access fee, Maya countered, stepping forward. That money was due to the utility company because of the action you initiated. You pay it. Eleanor's teeth clenched. The money was nothing to her, but the capitulation was torture. Fine, the fee, and I will ensure the ARB handles the initial $500 fine for your water feature. She spat the last two words out. But the sign comes down now. You surrender all documentation regarding the 2021 survey, and you sign a non-disclosure agreement stating you will never discuss the specifics of Lot 42's boundary or the utility easement again. Liam looked at Maya, a silent consultation passing between them. They had her conceding the debt and the fine. But they needed more than a cover-up. They needed protection. No NDA, Liam stated firmly. The sign comes down when we have two things: the certified retraction for the ARB notice and a written notarized statement from you, Eleanor Henderson, that you will personally intervene with the utility board to halt their geological inspection of Lot 38 until a full, independent audit of the 2021 resurvey and its impact on Lot 42 is completed. He was turning the tables completely, using the threat of exposing her deck to force her to run interference for their pool. Eleanor stared at them, the rain running mascara streaks down her cheek. It was a humiliating, impossible demand. But the sight of the word fraud painted in crude boat paint on the side of that massive tote, potentially visible to every resident driving home when the rain lifted, was a ticking time bomb for her entire life in Meadowbrook. Her power was built on an illusion of perfection. I will draft the paperwork, she finally conceded, her voice a near-silent whisper of absolute defeat. The ARB retraction and the statement to the utility board. You will receive it by 11 a.m. tomorrow. The sign comes down at 11:01 a.m. If a single neighbor sees that sign, or if you contact anyone regarding this matter before 11 a.m., the deal is off, and I will prosecute the fraud charge against you myself. She whirled away, walking briskly, almost running, across the lawn and back toward her fortress of immaculate compliance. Liam and Maya closed the door, leaning against it, breathing heavily. They had won the first round. They had turned their $50 investment into a tactical nuclear weapon. The rain stopped an hour later, leaving the neighborhood washed clean and eerily silent, the air filled with the smell of damp concrete and ozone. The sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the backyard with a blinding late-afternoon intensity. The giant, inverted IBC tote, with its crude, accusatory message, now shone like a defiant, ugly beacon. By 7 p.m., the neighborhood messaging board was an inferno. Did anyone else see the sign at the Harrison place? What is going on? It's about Mrs. Henderson. Fraud? This is insane. I always knew that deck was too big. Utility risk. Is the power grid safe? The phone rang precisely at 8 p.m. It wasn't Eleanor. It was Mr. Davison, the mild-mannered, rarely seen HOA president, Eleanor's nominal superior, who usually acted like her personal secretary. Liam, Maya, listen to me. I just got off the phone with Eleanor. She's making arrangements to cover the immediate fees. But this public display, it has terrified the other board members. We can't have the neighborhood talking about utility interference. His voice was thin, laced with genuine fear. She showed us the pictures of your pool, the footings, the orange stake. She's claiming you are deliberately creating a panic to extort the ARB. We're not extorting anyone, Mr. Davison. We have irrefutable evidence she illegally moved the easement boundary to frame us, knowing her own deck was already in violation of the new rules she authored. That's fiduciary fraud, Liam snapped, tired of being the villain. I understand your position, Liam, I do, but you've forced Eleanor's hand. She's pulled the biggest card she has. Mr. Davison sighed, a sound of utter defeat. The board just held an emergency three-way vote. Eleanor is leveraging a clause in the 2017 covenants regarding persistent, unapproved commercial activity on residential properties. Liam frowned. Commercial activity? We made a pool. What are you talking about? The bamboo fence, Davison said, his voice dropping lower. She found your original Facebook Marketplace listing. The bamboo screening wasn't just decorative. You bought a bulk surplus pallet from a liquidated landscaping supplier in the next county, and you included a line in your original listing. Slightly damaged, suitable for non-commercial fence repair or small-scale decorative installations. She's arguing the sheer quantity you acquired, and the wording of the listing proves you intended to run a small, unapproved construction supply business out of your garage. That's insane. We bought a pallet of wood scraps for a pool enclosure? Maya burst out. It may be insane, but it's legal precedent in this county, Davison insisted, rushing his words. She's connecting that commercial activity to the presence of the unauthorized industrial container, your IBC tote. She's claiming the whole setup isn't a pool. It's an unauthorized, unregistered commercial storage unit that you tried to camouflage. And under the commercial overlay rule, the penalty is not a fine. Liam felt the floor shift under his feet. He knew this was the counterpunch, the devastating move she had saved. What is it? Liam asked, his voice barely a rasp. Under Section 9A3 of the Meadowbrook Covenants, Davison whispered, his voice cracking. Unauthorized persistent commercial activity allows the ARB to petition the county for immediate structural condemnation. The line went dead. Liam looked at Maya, the color draining from his face as the rain began to spit again. Structural condemnation wasn't a fine or a legal battle. It was the legal determination that a structure was unsafe, illegal, and must be completely demolished and removed by a county-contracted wrecking crew, with the owner liable for all costs. The tote, Liam, she's talking about the tote. It's an industrial container, Maya stammered. No, Liam said, shaking his head slowly, a deep, sickening realization dawning. He remembered the $4,000 quote for the AC unit. He remembered the crumbling porch steps. She's not just talking about the tote. She's combining. The two figures emerging from the county SUV moved with the heavy, methodical gait of officials who were accustomed to being unwelcome. They ignored the driving rain and the illuminated sign on the IBC tote, focusing instead on the house. The powerful flash on the camera of the second official. A burly man named Jenkins strobed every few seconds, cataloging the unauthorized commercial structure and the encroached utility zone. The lead official, Barton, a tall, gaunt man whose rain slicker only amplified his severe demeanor, held a clipboard protected by a heavy plastic sheath. Liam opened the door, bracing himself for the assault. He was no longer trying to negotiate. He was initiating the counterattack. Mr. Harrison, Mrs. Harrison, Barton stated, his voice devoid of emotion like reading from a teleprompter. We are County Code Enforcement. We are acting on a petition of structural jeopardy, filed by the Meadowbrook Acres ARB under the authority of Section 9A3 of the Covenants and Bylaws, concerning multiple persistent, unapproved modifications to Lot 38, particularly involving subsurface utility easement disturbance and non-conforming commercial usage. He didn't wait for a response, simply holding out a document sealed in plastic. This is the preliminary order for structural assessment, which effectively places a lien on the property and initiates the condemnation timeline. Any attempt to alter the structures, including the IBC tote and the concrete pad, will be considered obstruction of justice and subject to felony charges. You are here under false pretenses. Officer, Liam cut in, his voice tight with controlled rage. He stepped onto the porch, pointing across the property line. The petition was filed by Eleanor Henderson, the ARB chairwoman. And she committed fraud to do it. Barton stopped writing, his pen hovering over the document. He looked up, his expression hardening. Sir, code enforcement deals with structural and zoning integrity. Political disputes are not within our mandate. This isn't political, Maya insisted, stepping past Liam. She handed Barton the printout of the 2021 ARB minutes and the zoomed-in property overlay. Look at this. She changed the easement boundary in 2021, and then she authored the new restrictive rule about subsurface disturbance, 2.5 inches. She did this knowing her own deck on Lot 42, which was built in 2017 with 30-inch footings, would be illegal the moment the new easement lines took effect. She created the rule, targeted us for a 4-inch footing on a tiny pad, and is sitting on a 30-inch violation herself. This entire condemnation process is retaliation to silence us from exposing her. Barton's eyes narrowed as he quickly scanned the technical documents. He wasn't stupid. The legal framework was clear. A potential case of fiduciary fraud and malicious use of the ARB was serious, even for a county agent. Jenkins, the photographer, lowered his camera, watching his partner. "This is a very serious allegation, Mrs. Harrison," Barton said, carefully folding the printouts. "If this is accurate, Mrs. Henderson is facing significant civil penalties and potentially criminal charges regarding the misallocation of HOA funds for a personal boundary adjustment. We will forward this to the county attorney's office immediately. However, our job today remains the structural assessment based on the existing petition." He looked back at the house, a shadow of skepticism passing over his face. "We have 3 violations: the easement disturbance, which your documentation alleges is shared by Lot 42, but still exists on Lot 38, the unapproved commercial activity, and now, a new concern that just hit our inboxes from the HOA board." He pulled his phone from an inside pocket, tapping the screen. At 8:30 p.m., the ARB, minus the chair incidentally, forwarded us an urgent alert citing a new immediate threat: environmental hazard. Maya felt a cold, sharp shock, worse than the rain. "Environmental hazard?" Barton angled his phone toward them. The screen displayed a close-up photo of the IBC tote's metal cage. Liam and Maya had spent hours scrubbing the thick plastic liner inside, but they had missed one small, faded, yellowed label glued to the interior aluminum scaffolding that caged the plastic. It was the original industrial safety warning label. Barton read the text from the label aloud, his voice steady. "Warning. Container previously used for non-flammable organic solvent toluene disocyanate, TDI. Do not repurpose for food, water, or domestic use without certified industrial cleaning and verification." Liam's jaw dropped. TDI, a chemical used in foam manufacturing, highly toxic in residual form. He remembered the smell of the cleaner he used. He thought it was just standard grime. "Eleanor didn't just target the bamboo, Liam," Maya whispered, horrified. "She targeted the origin of the plastic. She found the original product sticker, took a picture, and sent it to the board, claiming we are swimming in toxic waste. The ARB submission alleges that you introduced a potential cancer-causing agent into the groundwater, used a container with documented toxic residue for recreation, and then placed this substance in proximity to a sensitive smart grid node," Barton explained, his face now grim. "The commercial activity violation is minor. The easement disturbance can be mediated, but a Class A environmental hazard near public utilities is an automatic, non-discretionary trigger for accelerated condemnation." He looked directly at Liam. The threat of legal jargon gone, replaced by a cold, immediate reality. "Mr. Harrison, you can appeal the ARB's political maneuvering all you want, but I cannot ignore an immediate, documented environmental health threat. My team is now under orders to initiate the controlled containment and removal of the IBC tote and the immediate excavation of the contaminated soil within a 5-foot radius of the disturbance. This is no longer a neighbor dispute. You have 30 minutes to evacuate the premises and collect essential belongings before we secure the area." Maya started to plead, tears finally welling in her eyes. "But the water is clean. We tested it. We used chlorine, we ran the filter for 2 days, we sealed the liner." "We operate on documented threat, not anecdotal claims, Mrs. Harrison," Barton said, stepping back and pulling a small, official yellow ribbon from his pocket. "The presence of the TDI warning label is sufficient. We are placing the entire western half of your yard under quarantine and structural condemnation." Liam watched Barton begin to unroll the bright yellow tape, stretching it across their front lawn toward the IBC tote in the backyard. The house, their home, was about to be officially declared a hazardous, condemned space, all because of a tiny, faded sticker that Eleanor had photographed and weaponized. The environmental threat negated all their leverage against her deck. He looked at the toxic IBC tote, the water now reflecting the flashing lights of the enforcement car. He looked at Maya, her face desperate, and knew they were seconds from losing everything. He had 20 minutes before they locked him out. He had to prove the water was safe. He had to neutralize the environmental hazard claim now, on the spot. "Wait," Liam said, his voice ringing out in the rainy night. He raised his hands, a desperate plea for a stay of execution. "One moment, just one. If the water is toxic and the residue is present, I will submit to the condemnation. But if the water is clean, you must admit that the ARB's claim of environmental hazard is fraudulent and was submitted with malicious intent, revoking the condemnation order." Barton paused, the yellow tape slack in his hands. "We don't do parlor tricks, Mr. Harrison. We need certified lab results." "You need visual evidence that the claim is malicious panic," Liam countered, walking past Barton, his movements deliberate. He walked to the center of the lawn, directly toward the IBC tote, now gleaming under the county spotlights. "What are you doing, Liam?" Maya cried out, recognizing the wild, desperate look in his eyes. Liam ignored her. He reached the IBC tote, still lying on its side, the crude fraud sign starkly visible. He grabbed the side of the plastic liner, using the momentum of the full water weight to leverage it upright onto the leveling pad. The IBC tote settled back into its foundation, the water churning. He then stepped onto the concrete block stool and climbed onto the rim of the pool, balancing precariously. He looked across the fence line, straight at Eleanor Henderson's house. She was standing in her kitchen window, watching. He could see her faint, victorious silhouette framed by the light. He looked down at the cool, clear, chlorinated water and then at the code enforcement team watching him from the lawn. Without another word, Liam plunged his hands into the water, scooped up a handful, raised it to his lips, and took a long, defiant public drink. He then pulled his hand back, spat a mouthful of water toward Eleanor Henderson's house, and looked at Barton. "Toxic, officer?" "I just drank it." "Now you have your visual evidence. Your environmental hazard claim is fraudulent. Your condemnation order is invalid. Now go check the 30-inch footings on lot 42. He stepped off the stool, dripping, triumphant. Barton stared, then looked back at the house across the fence. He radioed his supervisor, relaying the extraordinary events and the complex counterclaim of fraud. A moment later, the radio crackled with a response. Barton listened, his face slowly turning pale. He lowered the radio, looking from the still-dripping Liam to Maya, and then back at the IBC tote. "The order stands, Mr. Harrison," Barton said, his voice flat. The supervisor consulted with the ARB president, Mr. Davison. He confirmed the filing. "But the water isn't toxic," Maya yelled, rushing toward him. "The water isn't..." Liam's world narrowed down to the sound of his own pulse, hammering a panicked rhythm against the silence of the porch. The revelation about his grandfather, the unfinished property settlement, and Clara Henderson's insidious power of attorney was not just a legal maneuver. It was the ground falling out from beneath his entire existence. "He is in a state facility, Barton," Liam managed, his voice a ragged whisper. "He has severe dementia. He can barely recognize his own reflection. Clara Henderson is using his incapacity to steal our home. We understand the emotional context." "Mr. Harrison," Barton replied, carefully avoiding eye contact as Jenkins started unspooling the yellow quarantine tape. "But the legal fact remains. The condemnation petition was filed by an interested party with valid, non-contested legal standing over the deeded owner. The environmental hazard and easement violations, though possibly engineered, are still sufficient for a temporary seizure." He checked his watch. "You have 19 minutes per the supervisor's instruction to gather essentials and exit the property." 19 minutes? Maya exploded, gripping Liam's arm. 19 minutes to pack 20 years of life? This is a miscarriage of justice. You saw the evidence of Eleanor's fraud. The fraud claim is being forwarded to the county attorney's office, Barton said, stepping off the porch. But that is a civil matter for the ARB. The condemnation order is a safety matter for the county. Two separate tracks. And right now, the safety track says, evacuate. Liam looked at Maya, his eyes burning with a terrible clarity. Grandma, the POA, the divorce, Maya instantly understood. The unfinished divorce settlement meant Liam's grandmother, Alara Harrison, still had a claim on the property that predated Clara Henderson's power of attorney over the grandfather's assets. If Alara could prove an outstanding interest, she could contest the POA's authority to file a condemnation. The divorce papers are in the safe deposit box, Maya said, her mind already spinning through escape routes. But we need something faster. We need her signature on a document right now that revokes any shared interest, officially signing the house over to the estate or to Liam. That strips the grandfather of the asset, and Clara of the control. Where is she? Liam demanded, already running inside. Willow Creek Assisted Living. It's 45 minutes away, maybe 30 if we push it. We don't have time to print legal documents. Liam didn't answer. He ripped the laptop off the table, grabbing the ARB minutes and the property overlay. He threw them into a backpack alongside his wallet and the truck keys. We go now. Barton, tell your men to stand down for 1 hour. We are going to the original owner with interest in this property. If we return with a signed witness document nullifying the grandfather's claim, you will revoke this order. Barton hesitated, looking at his radio. I cannot authorize a stay, Mr. Harrison. If you are not out, we will initiate forcible removal in 20 minutes. Then you make your choice, Liam said, slamming the door open. You can forcibly remove 2 victims of documented fraud, or you can give us 20 minutes to find the true owner and settle this whole illegal fiasco. If we're not back, you condemn it. But if we come back, and you've moved this tape 1 inch closer to the front door, the first person I sue is you. It was a reckless bluff, but Barton flinched. The specter of a lawsuit involving property fraud, POA abuse, and environmental panic against county enforcement was terrifying. He signaled Jenkins to stop the tape spool. 20 minutes, Mr. Harrison, and I start the clock now. The drive to Willow Creek was a blur of speed and adrenaline. Liam drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, while Maya frantically called the facility, explaining the high stakes, life-altering emergency and demanding access to Alara Harrison. They arrived in 18 minutes, peeling into the visitor parking lot, just as the code enforcement team at home was likely debating when to start the forcible entry. Alara Harrison was in the common room, a sharp, elegant woman in her late 70s, compromised only by a persistent tremor in her hands. She recognized Liam instantly. Liam! What is it, darling? You look like you've been chased by a ghost. Worse, Grandma. Eleanor Henderson, Liam gasped, sinking into the chair beside her. He quickly explained the pool, the fine, the easement, and the final. Devastating blow. Clara using the POA over the grandfather to condemn the house. All because Alara never filed the final property dissolution after the 2005 divorce. Alara's eyes, bright and clear, flashed with cold fury. That cheap little opportunist. George, your grandfather, he begged me not to file the final deed transfer. He said it was his insurance policy to get the house back if he ever got well enough. A useless, sentimental gesture? It's being used as a weapon, Grandma, Maya urged, pulling out the laptop. We need you to sign a document right now. A quitclaim deed or an affidavit of non-interest, anything that shows you are revoking the joint tenancy and transferring all existing interest to Liam's name, effective immediately. That breaks Clara's POA access to the property. And you think a hastily typed document will hold up against a county condemnation order? Alara asked, her eyes narrowing. It will create enough legal confusion to get a stay on the condemnation and force the county attorney to look at the fraud, Liam pleaded. It buys us time to get a real lawyer. Alara looked at her grandson, seeing the raw fear and the righteous anger. She nodded slowly. Get me the paper, Liam, he typed furiously, simplifying the language, invoking emergency clauses, and ensuring the document stated clearly that Alara Harrison, as the last legally unencumbered joint tenant, was transferring her full rights and responsibilities for Lot 38 to her grandson, Liam Harrison, thus nullifying any property claims held by her estranged husband and, by extension, his POA. He printed the document at the facility's front desk, found a notary who was visiting another resident, and 10 minutes later, Alara's signature was affixed to the paper, legally witnessed and stamped. "Go! And tell that miserable woman that the Harrison family is not as broken as she thinks we are," Alara commanded, her voice firm. They arrived back at Lot 38, tires squealing exactly 37 minutes after they left. The yellow tape now ran across the front lawn, and Barton and Jenkins were standing on the porch. Barton holding the final, official, condemned sign. "Time's up." "Mr. Harrison," Barton stated, his hand moving to tape the sign to the front door. "Stop!" Liam commanded, jumping out of the truck. He ran up the steps, holding the stamped document like a holy relic. "Read this, Barton." This document, signed, dated, and notarized just now, is an immediate transfer of all outstanding property interest from Alara Harrison, the last legally active, mentally competent owner, to me. Clara Henderson's power of attorney is invalidated with respect to this property. The party that filed the condemnation petition is no longer legally authorized to do so. Barton snatched the paper, his eyes racing over the bold, underlined text and the notary seal. His jaw tightened. The legal ground had just shifted under his feet again. The condemnation order was based on the grandfather's POA. If the primary interest was transferred, the POA's authority over that asset ceased. He looked up at the window of Lot 42. Eleanor Henderson was still there, but now she had a phone pressed to her ear, her perfect expression beginning to crumble. She had clearly seen the frenzy and was now getting the news. Barton radioed his supervisor again, speaking in low, urgent tones. The exchange was short. He lowered the radio, looking at the condemnation sign in his hand, then back at Liam. "The legal team acknowledges the new documentation. It creates sufficient ambiguity regarding the petitioning party's standing," Barton announced, his voice clipped. He slowly peeled the tape back off the front door. "The condemnation order for Lot 38 is temporarily revoked. We are replacing it with a simple, immediate cease and desist order regarding the pool and the concrete pad, pending a full review of the property deed and the ARB minutes you submitted." A wave of exhausted relief washed over Liam and Maya. They were home. They had won the stay of execution. Barton nodded curtly, then turned to Jenkins. "Jenkins, the IBC tote is a separate issue. Environmental hazard. We still need to contain the TDI risk." "Wait," Liam interrupted, pointing toward the window of Lot 42. "The environmental hazard was proven fraudulent by me drinking the water which you witnessed. Now, you have proof of Eleanor's malicious fraud and intent to weaponize the ARB against a non-owner. You have an affidavit of property transfer. But there is one document you have yet to act on. The evidence that Eleanor Henderson's own deck footings are a 30-inch, pre-existing violation of the utility easement she authored and weaponized against me." Barton stared at him. The condemnation was off, but the fraud investigation was open. He had his marching orders from the county attorney: follow the law, no matter where it leads. Barton spoke into his radio one last time. "Supervisor, the structural assessment on Lot 38 is terminated. We are diverting the investigation based on new evidence of utility. Easement fraud involving Lot 42. Requesting immediate dispatch of the geological survey team to the western perimeter of Lot 42 for subsurface disturbance assessment." He lowered the radio and looked across the fence. Line Eleanor Henderson was no longer in the kitchen window. She was standing on her perfect composite deck, staring in horror at the yellow caution tape still running a crow.